Hello, my name is Robin Mitchell and welcome to this special episode on our series of podcasts on Electropages. I'm joined by two very special guests from ENNOVI who used to be Interplex, and I would like you guys, starting with you, to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and the things you enjoy in your free time.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having us. My name is Sanjiv Chhahira. I manage our global sales and marketing for Interplex and now Inovi as of last week. Still getting used to that. I've been with the company for over 25 years. I've had various roles in the company. Started as a manufacturing engineer and grew into various positions. I've also seen and been through a merger with Amtech in 2014 and subsequent transitions and transformations with two other private equity firms in 2016 and of course the latest one in 2021.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And you?
My name is Ulrich Plewnia. I'm responsible for product development, project management, and product strategy. And I'm been with Inovi now for a year, since the beginning of this year, relatively new. I started my career with vehicle OEM in traditional powertrain development. That's where I originally come from, and then I spent time with a couple of tier ones, also with powertrain, and then finally in the electrification business before I joined Inovi.
Fantastic. So, my first question, why has the name changed from Interplex to Inovi?
So, of course, Inovi is a carve out of Interplex.
Right.
And we have always been, earlier this year, what we did was we carved out and went into three different distinct market segments: automotive, medical, and datacom. And the reason we did that was historically Interplex comes from a base which has been primarily known for stamping, plating, molding, and automation. We had a very large customer base, multiple segments that we serviced in multiple parts of the world. And so with the change in the market, within the automotive market, what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring more focus within the automotive industry and in our products, and in particular to electrification. And we thought it would be best to take that and build on the foundation that Interplex already had over 60 years of doing these products, these capabilities, and now bringing it into specifically for automotive as the market starts getting more sort of mature and the requirements start changing, and therefore that's how Inovi came about.
And so it's really trying to give you your identity that you are specializing in automotive electric systems.
Correct. Well, it's synonymous with a few things. It's synonymous, the name Inovi is synonymous for us with electrification.
Right.
It's synonymous with innovation, and it's synonymous with sustainability.
It's not electric innovation by chance, is it? The name.
It's a little bit where it comes from, yeah.
That's where it comes
I
from.
think Inovi is kind of like
Electric
I can see
innovation,
that. I can
correct.
definitely see that. That's fantastic. I think the first question, and probably the most important question when it comes to electrification in general, is why is it so important?
To change the name.
No, sorry, I apologize. Why is the electrification of vehicles so important in today's industry?
That is one of the big megatrends, one of the big changes in automotive. I mean, it's everything related to user experience, everything related to autonomous driving, and then the change in the drivetrain, electrification. Combustion engine is considered to be not sustainable anymore, and is for various reasons replaced by an electric drivetrain. Electric drivetrain has a number of advantages. It's much simpler to implement and install. It's much easier for all the new car manufacturers, new entries that are coming to work and build in electric drivetrains. So there's a very, very strong need. We see electrification growing massively. The various predictions going up to 65-70% of electrified vehicles by 2028, 2030, and more of half of them being battery electric vehicles. That's a massive growth there, with a lot of new technologies, a lot of innovation, a lot of change of technology that we're seeing right now.
And so essentially, it's fundamentally it's a climate issue, it's a sustainability issue, and it's the fact that and a resource issue. So the need to get away from fossil fuels towards fully electric systems, and hence that's why it's so important to have electrification.
Correct. And then when you look at the trends, it's all on the basis of sustainability. We want to reduce our carbon footprint and take away dependency on fossil fuels.
Of course.
Right? That's the underlying fact. Now you look at the numbers. In 2018, 5% of the vehicles in the world globally were electrified. In 2022, it was approximately 22%.
Is that fully electric or
Both.
hybrid?
It's
Hybrid as well?
both.
Okay.
It's some form of electrification,
Yeah.
if you will. And if you fast forward to 2030, the projections are roughly 72% will be electrified. Of that, 45% will be pure battery electric vehicles,
Which is a huge percentage.
which is a huge percentage.
Yeah.
So while the overall globally the car market will grow, but the electrification portion of the car market will grow exponentially. And so and when you look at what's happening in the drivetrain below that, it's a complete revolution, versus an evolution from what's happening in the ICE engines.
It's not a small series of
Changes.
It's a massive change very quickly. It's disruptive, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the changes are not predictable, and they're not predictable because of change in technology, primarily battery technologies. 5 years ago, there were certain battery technologies that existed. No one knew where it would be 5 years from now. And now, sitting today, we don't know what it will be in 5 years from now. And so that's what's driving. When you ask why is electrification important, that's the premise of why electrification is important.
Now, as the market currently stands, as the industry in general currently stands, do you think that it's not ready because of that huge amount of growth that's going to happen? Do you think it's not ready for it, or do you think it's going to struggle to try and meet that demand?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Just yes.
Yes. Which is why we see also this large amount of technologies being developed, because there are many players trying out many different things, and there are just not enough resources and sources available to satisfy all the needs. I mean, take the battery cells as an example. There's always a discussion which battery cell technology will prevail, which shape will prevail. And I believe that for the foreseeable future, you will see all of them because there are just not enough of them. Right? There's prismatic, there's pouch, there's cylindrical, there's semi solid state, there's solid state coming. But it will take a long time until one or two of them will prevail.
Yeah. And so you predict in the short term a more fragmented market and technologies and usage, but then as it becomes mature, everyone knows one type is quite good, and that becomes the dominant. But that could be 30, 40 years away, whereas in the next 5 years, like you say, it could be a mix and match of all different kinds of technologies.
Exactly, it's going to be a mix and match of those technologies because the OEMs also need to differentiate one from the other.
Of course.
So of course they're not going to have the same thing because then how do they differentiate? Of course, as Uli mentioned, the user interfaces in the car and all that will be an aspect of it.
Yes.
But also what's in the powertrain will also differentiate one from the other. It's very similar to what was in the combustion engine.
Yeah.
The OEMs were known for having certain type of drivetrain, certain type of engines. Think of that as electrification now.
And so does that mean that certain battery technologies would be incompatible with certain types of drivetrain?
No.
Or do you not think that's going to be the case?
I don't.
No. Actually, it's quite replaceable. I think what Sanjiv is referring to is that OEMs need to find ways to differentiate.
I see.
If you think about 20 years ago, you were partly selecting a car because of the engine, because of the characteristic, the way it drives.
Number of liters it's got in the cylinders, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
4-wheel drive, 3-wheel,
Those kind of things. With electric cars, you don't have that different characteristic anymore. And if there's a difference in characteristics, it's very easily changeable, very easy to reproduce.
Like range, for example.
And this is where distinguishing factors coming in. Range is one, charging speed is one, but the drive itself is not. So So the range and charging speed, that is defined a lot by the chemistry of the battery, by
Yeah.
the type of battery. Right? And this is where OEMs need to start to distinguish. Unlike for combustion engines, where it's the calibration of the engine, how fast is fuel being injected, how does the engine sound, right? The sound, the sound system of the exhaust of the engine plays a major role in the sale.
And I suppose this fundamentally comes down to the fact that a combustion engine vehicle is entirely mechanical, so it depends on all the so there's a lot of variation in what can happen in that drivetrain. But in an electric system, it's just battery, power management, straight to the motor, which directly connects to the wheel.
Exactly.
And so there's not much room for making adjustments. You can't make the battery suddenly more efficient. It's not going to happen.
Well, I like to say it as, the powertrain has gotten simpler because of the number of components going down. But at the same time, each of the elements have gotten a lot more sophisticated and a lot more complex. So battery technology, for example, in itself, you have different chemistries, you have different types of batteries, and all that will play into the range and charging what Uli was speaking about. So that's where, the differentiation portion comes in.
The challenges are very different.
Yeah.
Very different challenges.
To develop a powertrain requires a lot of calibration, system integration, and tuning to each other. But if I change my tires, the stiffness of the drivetrain has to change.
Yes.
And therefore the amount of fuel I inject changes. And I need to redo everything. That is different. The challenges are here more in, for example, service and repair. If you think about, if you now get if you have a system failure, all what you get is an electrical signal, which tells you this is what went wrong. But that signal, because of the granularity, what you can measure can refer to a whole lot of things. And it's very difficult to actually trace back what is the error. Sometimes very difficult to reproduce. If with a combustion engine, you drive into a dealership and you've got white smoke coming out, well, you pretty much narrow it down already.
Yeah.
Right? Because of mechanical error. And usually mechanical error is down to wear and tear. So you can see it. Right? That is very different. So the challenges for the automotive companies, for the OEMs, change significantly.
And I never actually considered that. That basically, to me, as a crude analogy, it kind of makes me feel like that errors or issues when things break or you get certainly electrical issues in a drivetrain system. It's the equivalent of a Windows blue screen. It's like it's got no information to it whatsoever.
Exactly.
You have no idea why it's
Exactly.
happened, and the only way you can figure out is to try and turn it on again, figure out what's actually not working to reproduce that error. Whereas if you've got a standard car, your typical combustion car, if the brake pad comes off, the brake pad's not there, so you can just replace the brake pad.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. So moving on to electrification in general, what would you say is the biggest challenge currently faced by engineers trying to electrify vehicles? This, I think, in relation to the drivetrain, I think.
To me, it is the speed of reliable product development, the speed of reliable execution.
Right.
What we see is that a lot of customers, OEMs, battery manufacturers, they're coming and they're saying, hey, I need to have a solution and it need to be production ready in a year's time. And that is that these because the development cycles are so fast, the rollover time for new product technology is so low. Like every 2 years you get a very, very new technology. And a lot of companies trying to catch up and get into the market. So the demand for quick execution is there. At the same time, you don't have the history. If I develop an automatic transmission that exists for 100 years, I have very well defined sign-off and validation procedures, and I know how they correlate with real world. I know if I test this, that represents 10 years of life. I don't have that with electric vehicles because none of them are around for 10 years.
No, so it's a new technology. It's not a mature technology at this
I'm
point.
guessing right now.
Yeah.
And what we see is that a lot of technologies are massively over-designed, right? So a lot of parts of the product are massively over-designed. At the same time, there are other elements that are quite risky, and we don't know what's going to happen in 7 years, 8 years. Yet at the same time, we don't have the luxury to go through extensive design of experiments and simulations because we need to be much, much faster. Development of a combustion engine took probably 5 years at least, 3 years if you run an application, a derivative of that. Now we need to be ready in a year's time with new technologies. So that reliable but fast execution, to me, is a big challenge. And a lot need to change in the mindset of the engineers. They need to approach it differently.
Interesting.
And there's a second element to it, is scalability. So not only do we want to design it faster in a compressed timeline, of course, all the testing that has to be done, etc., in this compressed timeline, but then be able to scale it up very quickly. Because it's great to make it 10 pieces in a workshop, but can you really scale it to make 1 million pieces a year, and then make it adaptive technology? That, be mindful, as Uli mentioned, it's a 2-year cycle. In a year from now, there'll be another refresh.
And that actually does remind me of a vehicle manufacturer who will not be named, but they have created I think single cast body frames. But the problem is, to do that you need specialist equipment.
Exactly.
And if you're planning to sell millions and millions of cars and you've only got 3 pieces of those machineries, and you find out in 2 years' time it's no longer useful, you haven't got the money to invest to actually build those things, and you're not going to be able to meet that fast turnaround that people are expecting of your cars. So it sounds like what you're implying is that basically, because it's hard to innovate quickly, and we haven't got all that history that we do with combustion vehicles, it's very difficult for engineers to make decisions now about their hardware for the future.
And this is why the second branch of innovation is very important. It's modular manufacturing lines.
Exactly.
And we're looking into that quite a bit. Obviously, modularity costs money.
Of course.
It drives investments. And you still need to be able to foresee how modular you want that. As an example, one of our products is a current collector. And we started off with current collectors, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 centimeters up to a meter. And we designed some of our machinery to deal with that. Now we see current collectors being 2 meters. And we're saying, oh, that must be the end. There's nothing else because you can't fit into the... For sure, it will not be the end.
They can get bigger.
But we've got no idea yet how this is going to look like.
Yeah.
Right. So the modularity that it can cope with what's coming in the future without knowing what it is, that's a second big branch
Making
of
it
innovation
future-proof, essentially.
that is driven by electrification.
Yeah, that's a real issue to have, is because that's going to require a lot of capital to invest every year or two, especially the technology changes, which is why you're talking about modular design.
Exactly, and this is where Uli said, and so it's always a delicate balance of shorter development cycles, faster refresh cycles, and redeploying the investment that you already had in place. So by doing things like building modular lines, we can sort of reuse that capital or elements or most elements of it, because that helps us in 2 things. A, keeps the cost structures down.
Yeah.
Secondly, helps us bring the product to market faster.
Now, one question I have about the company in general is, how is it, or what solutions does Inovi, not Interplex, Inovi, now provides to engineers to help them with electrification?
I think there are a couple of things for the engineers. The first thing is, most fundamental, we changed the company to be an automotive company focusing on electrification. Right? Interplex before, one of the strengths was really to serve all the markets, be very fast with the customers, very reactive. But then everybody was doing everything in every location. Right? So the first is to say, okay, we need to focus. The second is to make sure that we leverage the talents globally. So we have a global organization and a regional organization. The regional organization executes. The global organization, for example, product development, product engineering, manufacturing engineering, they develop technologies that then can be applied regionally. So that global leverage is, I think, is the second big part. The third one is that we have a dedicated team, a dedicated process for advanced engineering and research that looks into future technologies for both product and process manufacturing. And then the fourth one is that we put a lot of emphasis on product strategy, product portfolio management in collaboration with sales, being very close to customers and to the market and trying to understand what are they doing. Again, that is a little different to the traditional combustion engine, powertrain, transmission market where you were going through evolutions rather than revolutions, where innovations were very carefully developed. You worked with research, incremental. You worked with research institutes together. You worked with engineering companies together. Here is everybody. There could be somebody coming around the corner you've never heard of who's got something radically new, and you need to adapt to that. So we need to be much closer to the market, understand what's happening, and having much more informal corporations, and from that identifying the technology needs, and then having our advanced engineering team going. So it's the global leverage, it's the focus on automation, it's the advanced engineering processes, and then the being close to the market through our product strategy teams.
Could you say collaboration?
Yeah.
But so could you give me some examples of the solutions that you provide for powertrains?
Yeah.
So we do we really are in three main segments or sub-segments, if you will, and I'll have Uli speak more about those. We are in battery systems because that really is the heart of everything. That combined with the rest of the powertrain, like the inverter, the integrated drivetrain, etc., because that also then drives it into efficiency. And then, of course, the third area is as you look at cars moving towards autonomous driving, connected mobility, and the amount of data that needs to be fed into a car and taken out of a car that's flowing out, all that becomes
It's immense. It's absolutely immense.
So everything to do with signal, that becomes another third branch of ours. And so we as Interplex are very actively involved, and Uli's team is very well and actively involved globally on those three areas. And we are doing some really key innovative things in those areas. And maybe Uli, you can speak a little bit more about some of the innovations that we are.
Thank you for leaving me the details.
It's the easy part question.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, to give you one example, the current collectors I was mentioning before. Few years back, there were plastic trays, hardwired, relatively thick, taking a lot of package space, and heavy solutions. Right? Then the next evolution is also where we spend a lot of time developing, is replacing a plastic tray with a laminate. So you've got metal plates and you have a laminate, and it gives you a very flexible, very thin, very lightweight solution. And the hard wires are replaced by flexible printed circuits, by FPCs. We all know that they're very expensive, not very environmentally friendly. So we're working on a technology replacing them with a die cut solution, where you basically cut the copper traces out of that material, and then combining that with an example of how that drives manufacturing technology. So that is a product technology, how that drives manufacturing technology. We have developed a method to combine the die cutting and the lamination into one process, so that saves a lot of space in the factory, saves a lot of money in the factory, saves a lot of time to manufacture.
I was about to say, I suppose that comes back to that point earlier where you said about being able to bring out innovations rapidly.
Yeah.
And so by combining those processes, you can bring out these products much faster than maybe other people on the market.
Yeah. And the customers are looking for more sustainable solutions, environmentally friendly solutions, and this also then walks right into an environmentally friendly solution.
Which is actually a good point, because it's not exactly a secret that as good as environmentally friendly as EVs try to be, there's a lot of issues around them with regards to their manufacturing, where, for example, manufacturing a lithium battery, obscene amounts of land is cleared, destroyed, mined to get the lithium, which is it looks good when you're driving in a city, you're not producing any smog around your car immediately, but the power station down the road is still coal powered, is still chucking out CO2, while the mine's being dug up from someone's backyard because they've got to get the lithium. So I think there is a very strong need for EVs to not only provide people with a cleaner way of traveling, but also one that's also more environmentally conscious, because in some ways you could argue that a traditional combustion engine right now is less damaging with respect to maybe the environment not the climate. I mean, like in the environment, like natural habitats of where, because metal mining is not as severe as lithium mining, for example. But what would you say on that point? Because I can see you give me a strange look.
You want to touch that?
Go for it.
No, I mean, I think these are all very good questions. The first one, it's very important how the energy is being generated.
Of course.
Right? Countries like Norway have a lot of water energy, and that's why they've got a very, very high adoption rate of EVs as well. And they are, from that perspective, makes sense. 80%.
Yeah, 80%.
Yeah, very, very high adoption rate of EVs. So for them, it makes sense. Other countries, probably less so, right? So that is definitely a critical element. You mentioned the mining. Another question is the disposing
Of course.
of the technology,
Yeah.
recyclability, and that is clearly something where we can influence, where we can work with it from our product technology. Right? We have developed a patent, for example, where the current collectors are not welded onto the cells; they're clipped on.
So they can be removed.
They can be removed.
Yeah.
That helps for recycling, but also helps in the factory when you run through the end-of-line test and you find a failure in one of the cells. You don't need to throw away the whole pack anymore.
Does it also help with, does that support repairing during the vehicle's use in its lifetime?
Theoretically, yes, yeah. If the CCA is broken, yeah. Right now, the cells are still. It depends on how the battery is being.
It depends on how the manufacturer puts it in.
But there are also technologies being investigated how you make the cells replaceable, that you don't have to take the whole pack away.
Like battery swapping and cell swapping, which is you can pop it in, pop it back out. So
exactly. So that's also being developed. So those are all things that still have to be developed. I think what is important when I mean, I was smiling because I agree with all your points, and as I said, I grew up with engine development, transmission development, so that's, I have to say, where still a big part of my heart is. So
fair enough.
But to be fair, electrification is still in its infants. I remember 2010, 2012, there were discussions about maybe selling 500,000 vehicles globally by 2020. At that point, it was clear electrification would come. The question was how fast and when would it come? So that means there's still a lot of developments coming.
And so it's not fair to judge EVs at this point, because it's a bit like when the first car came out and you could say, well, it only goes 5 miles an hour, it's a rubbish car, don't bother developing it. But you give it more time, suddenly you've got yourself a 120 mile an hour car.
Imagine electric vehicles were around in the 1900s, right? I mean,
they were the first cars.
First cars. So imagine that would have prevailed. And now somebody would come around and say, hey, I'm going to put a metal block in there and I'm going to put in something explosive, and you've got an explosion in your car and that drives. You're looking to say, you're crazy. I'm not going to do that, right? So if you look at it a little bit from that perspective, I think there's a lot of happening. There's a lot of good questions, fair questions, but I think there will be answers being developed for that.
Yeah, and I think this really is in its infancy, that side of it. I mean, first we were looking at the adoption of electrification of vehicles, and now they will start looking at recycling, etc.
Yes.
What we are trying to do at Inovi is make sure that we already think ahead of that. So we think of sustainability holistically, not just in obvious supplying sustainable products to our customers.
So from pulling it from the ground to when it's finally getting disposed of, the entire life cycle.
Exactly. And then what do we do for our products that we make them recyclable? So what Uli mentioned, it's a snap-on connection system that can be taken off.
Yeah.
You mentioned the swappable batteries. So things like this that we are already working on. We are working with a customer that has swappable batteries right now.
Oh, brilliant.
So we are trying to do our share of it, and then of course the entire industry as a whole has to do, and the sum of it all will make it a sustainable industry.
And so I take it you would see yourself as leaders in the field of drivetrains when it comes to making them sustainable.
I think so. We are. It's for us. It's one of our pillars, sustainability. And so, as I mentioned to you, sustainability not just in our operations, but holistically looking at also the products as we design them.
Now, I've got one question, which is a bit of a political question. And it's kind of, but
It's for you.
It's political, but more legislative, and it's a bit of a. So, do you see? So I'll give you an example. Recently in the UK, Rishi Sunak, he's basically pushed back the ban. I think it was the ban on all petrol cars being in the UK by 2030. He wants to get rid of them all. But now he's pushed back on that because he's seeing that as an unrealistic goal. But do you see that kind of action making your job harder because it's essentially encouraging to go back to fossil fuels?
I don't think so. I don't think it makes our job harder. There is a phenomenon taking place, which is the market trends. I mentioned to you the statistics, and that's happening. Whether somebody wants to be part of it or not, that's their choice.
Yeah.
This is going to happen. The world is facing a fossil fuel issue.
Absolutely.
And we, as responsible citizens of the world, it's upon us to leave the world cleaner and more greener for the next generation. And so this is going to happen. Tough questions that we still have to answer and solutions that we still have to create on recyclable and lithium ion and what are we doing with all of these and how are we mining that. Of course, all of that has to be taken into account. How do we recycle the batteries? But that doesn't take away the fact that we have to start that journey, and we have also embarked on that journey, and it's going to move there. Some parts of the world will adapt to it faster, and some will adapt slowly, but we strongly believe that globally we will adapt to that. And therefore, it does not make our life harder or easier. Simply, we are playing in that space, and we will move forward in that space.
And so, regardless of the decision that he made, you still feel like that the market, it's fundamentally, it's market-driven forces. It's where people put their money, and what you're seeing is that people are switching over to EVs anyway in general.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of money going into research into battery systems. We don't know where the batteries are today. They will get more efficient, that we know. We don't know what that will look like 5 years from now. But we constantly monitor that trend so that we can adapt ourselves towards
And
that.
as a company, you're monitoring these trends to try and always make sure you get the best technology in your products.
Exactly. Well, not only in our products, but we are offering also our customers the best solution for them to come to market.
And so on that topic, when it comes to customers, I take it that you get very involved with their projects.
We do. So it really depends. There are customers who like to have full control of how they're designing the product, to customers that they work very closely with us from sort of a concept all the way to the design. So it's from cradle to grave, as we call it.
Yes, I've heard.
And we are seeing more of that concept from cradle to grave because the market is moving. And as Uli mentioned, as new products come out, there is no experience in the older products. So they need more help, and that's where we become critical.
And if anyone's going to be an expert on your products, it's yourself.
Exactly.
And so this is and I've seen this trend with other companies. It's the idea that it's a bit of a realization where companies are finding out that if you're a customer to let's say I'm going to be a customer of Inovi, I can leverage your years and years and years of experience in that field, and it doesn't cost me a penny to do that because you've got the experience. I say to you, how am I going to put this in my product? And then you come along and say, we've seen these case studies, and so these are the best things for you to do.
Right, Robin, there's another important thing. Our customer designs it once for themselves. We design it multiple times for various customers.
And you see things that maybe I won't see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to fail fast and you want to fail cheap. And we see that early on where we worked on something, so a customer who works with us can leverage off our experience.
And so when they leverage off your experience, you're basically hiring someone who's already got their 20, 30 years of experience in that field, in that product.
Exactly.
And you don't have to commit yourself to trying to find someone to bring into your company to then give them a salary to try and figure out how they can take your product and then put it in.
Exactly. And then I'll let Uli speak to this, but we also have, just as Uli spoke earlier about modular manufacturing, we also have modular product portfolios. So you can take combinations of technologies that we have, proven technologies, and put it together into one product.
Modularization is something I've seen become very popular in the past sort of maybe 4 years, because to be able to mix and match means you can take complex functions, different parts, stick them together, and you reduce the complexities of installation, reduce the complexities of construction, while you're maximizing the technologies that you can get.
And time to market.
Which is probably the most important thing, because as you said before, if you are in a situation where you're trying to beat other vehicle manufacturers and you want to get the latest technology out of there,
Right.
you have to be the fastest to build those things and get them out. And so leveraging your expertise helps massively.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is coming back to what your question about what are OEMs doing, right? That's exactly what they're still trying to figure out, because on the one hand, they have a lot of open capacity. They don't know what to do with their plants. They don't know what to do with their engineers. On the other hand, they need the solutions fast. They want to work with companies who have already gone through these learning cycles, right? There's an increase in function and features coming that requires to redefine the system borders, the system boundaries, and for them to receive complete plug and play solutions that they can integrate fast into their vehicles. So it's right now we are still in a situation where we see everything where some vehicle OEMs trying to do everything, and some are doing parts and outsourcing other things, and then some are saying, hey, we need to partner with somebody from the outside. And I think that will still go on for a while, because there's a big political pressure as well on what to do with the existing resources from combustion engines.
Now, just before we wrap this interview up, I've got one more question. For people who are watching this video right now and they want to get involved with ENNOVI solutions, what would you recommend they do?
Apply.
There you go. Apply. Where?
Call us, apply. I mean, we will,
I mean, seriously, we are extremely fast growing as well. I mean, this is a growing industry. It's a growing segment within automotive, and we are even growing faster than that segment. We are growing faster than the market right now. We are developing a lot of new technologies. We are putting a lot of effort into innovation. We are collaborating with more and more customers every day. So, I mean, I said it nonchalantly, but actually there's a truth in it.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much for taking the time to see us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.